So welcome. This is February 26, 2023, and it's our occasional presentation in our North Texas Church of Freethought Zoom call. We don't have presentations every single time, but we do today, and this one's going to be fun, I think. I'm calling it the Christian Wolf in Jesus Clothing, How Why the He Gets Us campaign is a ridiculous fraud. You may know, of course, that our stance on religion, being a church of atheists, is that your religion is just what you think about the big questions of existence. And what makes those questions big is that they're really unanswerable, or that they can't be answered the same for everybody, because it's your existence, your purpose and meaning that matters. And there's no escaping one's personal responsibility when it comes to that. What is it we're really trying to do after all? Are we trying to believe in things? When people talk about religion, they're like, "Oh, what do you believe in? Or what does your church believe? What's that belief?" And we say, no, that's really kind of looking at it the wrong way. What it is that we're really trying to do is to not believe in things that may be wrong. We say you should believe in as few things as possible, although it's okay to be content in behaving for now and as if something is the case. But you have to just remember the tentative nature of understanding as we find our way through to it using facts and reason. Here's our principles. We could make several services on each one of these things. They're very deep subjects. Reasoning, huge subject. Enjoyment, what that means. Appreciation, which is different than enjoyment. And finally, love, which has to do with values and really exploring our meaning and purpose. Please do check out our Facebook page, our website, and our YouTube channel. This is going to go up on our YouTube channel later today. Visit us on Facebook and Twitter. We depend on your support also, because Freethought's not free. You can visit or donate at our website, www.churchoffreethought.org. We do depend on your continuing support. We hope that by supporting us, you're supporting your own values, because we can do together what we can't really do on our own. And of course, we've been using this discount for a long time. You don't have to tithe 10%. We only tithe 8%. It's a bargain. This is how you can demonstrate your commitment and be the future that you wish to see. So our formal title today, The Christian Wolf in Jesus Clothing. As you may know by now, there's been a multi-million-dollar ad campaign going on to promote Christianity. They call it He Gets Us. It's a slick production aimed at humanizing Jesus to make him seem more like he's just an ordinary Joe, just like us, with all of the same kinds of problems that people have today. But of course, he's a really swell guy. He loves his enemies and wants to, have anybody at his table as long as they'll pass the cheese. And this ad campaign, it implicitly urges people. It means that Jesus understands the human predicament. So he's just a good guy to have for your imaginary friend. The campaign got more attention recently, and here's an example of some of their ads. And it got more attention recently because it bought two ads that aired during the Super Bowl. As you see there, the pricing on Super Bowl ads has been going up, currently at about $7 million a pop. The overall campaign has already spent, it's at about $100 million. It plans to spend 10 times that, $1 billion, over the next 3 years. And there you see Jesus was a great football lover and football player, so he probably was, the most valuable player and everything, in addition to all the other cool stuff that goes with Jesus. But it goes beyond that. The PR campaign slogans are a pablum of feel good, what a kind and generous guy Jesus is, since he was all about sharing and caring about the social problems that just happen to be culturally praiseworthy to pay attention to in the early 21st century America. Indeed, the slogans seem to suggest a kind of what's been called liberation theology. They borrow elements from the current social justice movement. They are, in a word, the fashionable word of today, woke, sort of, because they're also vague. And if you go to the campaign's website, there's nothing more explicit there. There's nothing in support of the rights of anyone, let alone women, families, LGBT, or other groups that the most well-known, the most vocal, and most influential Christians are always attacking. Have liberal live and let live Christians have they ever engineered and paid for PR efforts like this? Who is behind the He Gets Us business anyway? And a lot of people have been asking this. The answer is that the donors are mostly anonymous. Those that are not anonymous are people like the billionaire Green family, owners of Hobby Lobby, which famously fought for and won the right to deny coverage of birth control under its employees' medical insurance, despite the Affordable Care Act's requirement for such coverage. And that's, of course, because, as you know, birth control is a sin. And Jesus never used birth control. Of course, that's not one of the slogans of the He Gets Us crusade. Oh, gee, we could have lots of fun thinking of all the things that Jesus was and wasn't this and wasn't that. And this ad campaign is completely neglected. Well, there's just not enough time to do it all. The organization that the funding flows through, as you see there, is the Signatory, also known as the Servant Foundation, which funds Christian missionaries and conservative Christian anti-abortion and anti-LGBT groups, notably the Alliance Defending Freedom. You see a couple of clips from the ADF's website there. Their idea of freedom is living under biblical law as interpreted by them. Oh yes, and the CEO of the Signatory was paid $225,000 in 2021. Jesus have to struggle with making ends meet on so little money? So what does all this mean? Well, it's an old story, isn't it? How has anyone ever gone about selling harmful things? Obviously, it has to be done by pretending what you've got to sell is good. Lies and hatred must be portrayed as truth and love. The end justifies any means is God's guiding principle. Now, consider this. Inasmuch as the ad campaign is intended to promote Jesus' message of love, understanding, kindness, and tolerance, is there any evidence at all that the people funding it have had any change of heart? Have the messages they're promoting had any effect at all on their own attitudes, beliefs, or behavior? Target audience is supposed to accept that the ads are coming from people that sincerely believe what they're peddling, but there is certainly reason to doubt that. In fact, there is good reason to suspect that the He Gets Us campaign is a cynical attempt to gain acceptance of a wolf in sheep's clothing with the expectation that it will ultimately help drive a regressive biblical agenda. Sheep's clothing does not change the wolf. Oh, we could do another whole service on that too. In fact, I think I'm just going to make an abbreviation from now on. Another topic for another service at FAST. I'll just throw that in from time to time. So it's also an instance of life imitating art. In this case, it's a hilarious imitation of the satirical Buddy Christ from Kevin Smith's 1999 film Dogma. Here in that film, the Catholic Church decides to update its mascot because crucifixes are too depressing and just not the right message for young people. Now let me ask you, doesn't this remind you of another industry that has long been selling poison with lies and misdirection? Have you ever wondered whether tobacco companies' executives smoke? There are no figures that I could find out about that, and if there were, those people would have to be surveyed and they would naturally realize the implications of their being asked. Would you believe what they said? I would only believe measured nicotine levels. But here's an account of a spontaneous interaction by the actor who played the Winston Man for 7 years. Counts one of the executives coming over as he's lighting up and saying, "Are you still smoking that stuff?" And he said, "Yeah, how come you guys from RJ Reynolds don't smoke?" And the executive turned to him and said, "We don't smoke this shit, we just sell it. We reserve the right to smoke for the young, the poor, the black, and stupid." Indeed, the peddling of supernatural delusions should make us think of what the tobacco companies got away with for so many years. They advertised smoking as being wholesome and healthy. They claimed doctors recommended it. They sold it to women as a way to conform to expected social norms and not get fat. Look at that. You should reach for a Lucky instead of overindulging. That's what cigarettes are. They're so great. You can look like you're supposed to. But wait, smoking also does the exact opposite. Women smoking cigarettes show how non-conforming, how independent, how liberated they are. Look at that. Even Wonder Woman smokes. They even promoted cigarettes to pregnant women, saying it would help them have easier births with smaller babies. Of course, it does stunt fetal growth, but they don't tell you that this actually translates to more operative, more cesarean deliveries because these compromised fetuses don't tolerate labor as well, more likely to get in trouble. Then, as the adverse health effects began to pile up, began to come out, 7 of the world's largest tobacco companies got together in 1977 and created a plan. You can look this up, Operation Berkshire, head off the regulation of their products. Congress had already required that health warnings be placed on cigarette packaging, and in 1970, those began to reference the U.S. Surgeon General. About the same time, TV and radio advertising for tobacco was banned by Congress. But Operation Berkshire, what was the purpose of that? It was to create doubt and give tobacco addicts an excuse to go on using. In 1994, the top executives of tobacco companies testified before Congress that nicotine is not addictive. Facts finally came out, culminating in the conviction of the major tobacco companies of racketeering charges, and that happened on August 17, 2006, by federal judge Gladys Kessler. She issued a 1,682-page opinion that, among other things, stated this. The case was about an industry, and particularly those tobacco companies that survive, profit, and sell a highly addictive product which causes diseases that lead to a staggering number of deaths per year, an immeasurable amount of human suffering and economic loss, and a profound burden on our national healthcare system. That they've known many of these facts for at least 50 years or more. Despite that, they've consistently, repeatedly, and with enormous skill and sophistication denied these facts to the public, the government, and to the public health community. So, do you see the parallels? Obviously, in the case of addictive supernaturalism, things are taking much longer than with addiction to smoking. When Christianity began as a small Jewish sect, it seemed as harmless as any other form of supernaturalism. I mean, what else was there back then? Knowledge of the world of objective reality was so scant. So it really didn't matter as much that people believed nonsense about astronomy, geology, health and disease, and so many other things. What else were they to believe? But when Christianity failed to convert the great mass of Jews and others, and especially when its teachings hardened into dogmas, it turned to controversy, to stamping out heresy. The Crusades, the Inquisitions, and the like. Christians forced Jews to publicly debate them for the purpose of disparaging Judaism and keeping the focus on Christian claims. And it's said that that is, in part, how the Bible came to have the familiar chapter and verses in order to more easily reference them. How like the present this is when debates are held on the existence of God. I should have put a slide up here showing one of those. A lot of good debates out there, but notably, you may have noticed, these debates are typically sponsored and promoted by the Godists. Why is that? Because we may suspect that is how they can focus attention on their doctrines in a world where their God is increasingly irrelevant at best. We may wonder if it will ever happen that peddling supernaturalist delusions will come to be seen as no more legitimate an expression of religion, and so no more an exercise of religious freedom than temple prostitution. They used to do that. The selling of time off in purgatory, right? Those wonderful indulgences. Or invidious discrimination against people with dark skins or the wrong tastes in sex as they do today. Supernaturalist delusions, after all, are as dangerous to mental and spiritual health as tobacco is to physical health. Secondhand supernaturalist delusions are more harmful than secondhand smoking. Here's the consequence of secondhand supernaturalist delusions, the 911 attacks. So it may be a long way off, but perhaps someday a judge will issue an opinion saying, in part, I just changed a few little words here. Cases about an industry, and particularly those religious groups that survive and profit from selling a highly addictive belief, which causes mental diseases that lead to a staggering number of deaths per year, an immeasurable amount of human suffering and economic loss, and a profound burden on our national mental health care system. That they've known many of these facts for at least 50 years. I think they've known them for centuries. Despite that knowledge, they have consistently, repeatedly, and with enormous skill and sophistication denied these facts to the public, the government, and to the public. And of course, that's exactly what the He Gets Us ad campaign is about. So let's get back to that. We got to talking about this on the Off the Record Sunday Zoom event of a couple of weeks or so ago, and it came up that He Gets Us can be taken in a way very different than that intended by the Jesus PR campaign, because the word to get used as a verb can mean to exact vengeance on somebody or to otherwise hurt and kill people. This character, by the way, the Wicked Witch of the West, she was perhaps the scariest of my childhood, far worse than any fabled devil. Those flying monkeys, they were worse than devils, but a moment's thought, especially realizing that Jesus is, according to Christians, the very same being as the Yahweh God of the Old Testament should make us shiver, should make us realize that he's far worse than the wicked witch of the West. And Jesus certainly does get us. Got the NTCOF e-newsletter yesterday morning, reminding you about today's meeting. You would have seen this graphic. And this, in turn, should put us in mind of the problem of evil. And we're going to do more on the problem of evil in the future. We haven't done that much in the past. We have at times. But this should also draw our attention to the fact that the problem of evil is not just one problem. Evil is a whole lot of problems, many more even than this. Cancer is not just one problem. Pretty much any tissue of your body can become cancerous. You can imagine a world without just one of these. It's a better world than that which the goddess assure us their deity created and controls. Same goes for infections by microorganisms. Same goes for parasitic diseases. Not to mention all the serious diseases that many people are born with. I had to make the font a little smaller here. There's thousands of these. This is just some of the top ones. So yes, Jesus gets us all right. In a future presentation, more than one in fact, is I'm thinking about them now that we'll go into greater depth about this. But this problem is actually a great many problems, is very relevant here, even besides these. This is another of the Jesus PR campaign slogans, that whatever you're facing, Jesus faced it too. But if it is to be believed, and I know that by now many of you have also thought, as I have, that, well, Jesus is pure myth anyway, so what's the point? But if it is to be believed that Jesus understands humanity because he lived with a few human problems, what about all the human problems that Jesus never lived with? He never got old. Did he ever get Ebola, cancer, lose a limb, have a stroke, get AIDS, schizophrenia? Was he a drug addict? Did he have an autoimmune disorder? Was he born with any type of severe birth defect? Was he ever evicted, thrown out of his home, fired from a job, discriminated against because of his skin color or gender? Was he ever orphaned, enslaved, castrated, or forced to work as a prostitute? What about all those things? He never faced any of those things. So the He Gets Us campaign slogan that whatever you're facing, Jesus faced it too, is a flat out lie. And of course, Jesus was not a woman, so, and even though he wasn't a woman, was he ever raped? Of course not. Did he ever serve a 20-year prison sentence? Oh, he was thrown into jail briefly. We could think of a lot more of these things. We could riff on this for a long time. And even, how could Jesus ever relate to one of these sad songs about a romantic betrayal or breakup? I mean, things that people commit suicide over, or the grief that comes with losing a loved one. Oh, people cried when he died, but he never cried about anybody. When he went to check on his friend Lazarus and found out Lazarus had died a few days earlier, he just said, oh, that's okay, I'll just go wake him up, raised him from the dead. Oh, Lazarus is back. He didn't have to mourn anybody. Yes, being beaten and crucified is very, very bad, to be sure. But Christians and others have come up with arguably much worse forms of torture and execution than that. Many do not leave much to be resurrected, though. There's a rather lengthy list of such gruesome methods listed on Wikipedia if you ever want to really get sick and throw up. James Joyce, the Irish novelist, his years are 1882 to 1941. He is said to have anticipated this line of thinking, according to his friend, English painter and writer Frank Budgeon. Joyce was inspired to write his landmark novel Ulysses because he saw the hero of the Odyssey as the ideal man, far surpassing Jesus in his abilities and accomplishments. And here's James Joyce saying, Jesus wasn't a perfect man. He was a bachelor, never even lived with a woman, and surely living with a woman is one of the most difficult things a man has to do, and he never did it. And we could easily turn this around and say, well, Jesus was a guy. He wasn't a woman who had to live with a man, and surely living with a man is even worse than a man living with a woman. At least that's the way the comedians would say. Personally, I don't find it, well, personally, people have all kinds of different experiences about things like that, but of course, Christians who know their Christianity will say that Jesus can understand anything that any human being has ever or could ever have to face or endure because, well, I mean, Jesus is God, and God is omniscient. The PR campaign never mentions that, though, and if it did, it would undermine the message, wouldn't it? Because the God of the Abrahamic religions, including Christianity, is far beyond any human sensibility or capacity. Such a deity, an extraterrestrial existing outside of space and time with the power to create and destroy universes that far surpasses humanity, even more than humanity surpasses the simplest microorganisms, that's not a being to which any human being can relate. And this deity, even in his human form, as Jesus, could walk on water, manipulate natural forces, and work all sorts of amazing miracles. I mean, how can Jesus get us in the intended sense of understanding us when he could just turn off the pain or anxiety sensations that would otherwise trouble a puny human being and that so many people have to live with chronically? Even if Jesus chose not to do that, even if he was a masochist as well as a sadist, he knew he was God and that whatever happened would be an inconsequential less than nothing compared to his eternal existence before and after his sojourn on earth. Heck, being God, Jesus would have known what any human experience was like even before he actually experienced it as a human being. There was no need for him to assume human form to understand humans. His earthly ministry, the focus of this He Gets Us campaign, it's just inconsequential. It has nothing to do with his salvific work, which is what we're told is so important about Jesus. Yeah, these are very serious problems for the He Gets Us PR campaign. The core belief of Christianity, after all, is not that Jesus was human, not that he was an all-around great guy who cared about others and should be considered an example to follow. Lots of people, including many that we may know personally, are as good as that. We talked about this last time in the context of Godist claims that their God is necessary for what they call objective morality. Even Paul, their Saint Paul, admitted that unbelievers can be good people. No, the He Gets Us campaign completely neglects the central claim of Christianity, which is that Jesus was not human, that Jesus was God. Not only that, but Jesus was killed as a human sacrifice to save humans from the certain eternal torture punishment that he himself, as God, would otherwise exact for the sins that he knew humans would commit even before he made them. That is what someone needs to get when it comes to Christianity. Oh, and also that only the people who sincerely and wholeheartedly believe in this doctrine, which they must do by faith, without and even in the teeth of controverting facts and reason, will be saved from the eternal torture fate. Now, once you accept all that, then what? Well, for one, why have anything to do with those evil unbelievers who are going to wind up in the eternal torture place? Why not hate them? Indeed, why tolerate them even in this life, since they're hindering others from salvation? As it is said, logical consequences and all. This is just like the excruciating oxygen tank pushing lung disease and slow, painful death from metastatic cancer or heart disease truth behind the smoking is cool, tastes good, and helps you resist the temptation to overindulge that will make you fat when it comes to smoking tobacco. Pretty close parallel, I'd say. Tobacco, I think, not even as bad. Well, personally, I'm not too worried about the He Gets Us business. Provides great mental exercise in the deconstruction of Godist nonsense, even in this slightly novel, slick form. Most educated people, I think, will be able to see through it. They'll probably not be taken in by it. If they know anything about Christianity, they'll be able to work these things out for themselves. And anytime anyone figures out a scam, it may make them a little better at not being fooled by the next scam. That's a good thing. This ad campaign also sends a subtle message that perhaps most Christians have got Jesus all wrong, that they do not get Jesus. That's not good for Christianity. Maybe a few deluded Christian bigots could actually, possibly, be softened a bit by the Jesus loved his enemies stuff. Well, that would be good. Of course, Christians who know their Bible will also know that Jesus really did hate his enemies, that the Pharisees, for example. So it would not be surprising if some really doctrinally pure Christians disliked the He Gets Us effort. Meanwhile, there's the many hundreds of millions of dollars that will not be going into such things as fighting for the religious freedom to keep women from using birth control and getting abortions, or to keep LGBT people from being able to participate normally in society. Finally, as mentioned above, there's now the opportunity for freethinkers like ourselves to piggyback on the additional well-known meaning of He Gets Us. Would draw needed attention to the problem of evil, which is arguably the strongest argument against Godism. I think Bart Ehrman, the Bible scholar, has that was one of the really strongest things that turned him into an atheist when he started out as a fundamentalist Christian. So we'll stop there for now. It is always for now. Let us take every opportunity to think and remember that thinking is the active process, while belief is just a sort of temporary resting place for our thoughts. Remember the prayer of a freethinker, of a rationalist that cares more for not believing in what may be wrong than in statements of faith and pronouncements of this I believe is I don't know. Now, 5-year-old that gets caught with their hand in the cookie jar and asks, why are you doing that? He says, I don't know. That's not really believable. But, this statement, I don't know, is probably more often when you hear it, it's truthful, which is a good thing. I mean, people speaking the truth. If you want to be the way, the truth, and the life, admit that you don't know. So again, join us in promoting facts and reason and celebrating doubt, of seeing religion as something different than you may have ever seen it before, as we do. And finally, Melius Facet, that's our Latin. I should put the English translation down there too. It just means do better, which also incorporates the idea of not letting the best be the enemy of the good. The fact that you can't be perfect doesn't mean that you shouldn't strive to do better. Not being perfect is a feature, not a bug. It means that we can improve. With that, we'll move on to Q&A discussion and go off the record. I hope that you've enjoyed this, and we'll put it up on YouTube later, and hopefully